doubt about that. But the political forces there, we even heard from the mayor of St. Louis, he etched on the law and order thing. These people are too much on the law and order thing and not on to getting to the bottom of this. The problem is that they know and they anticipate that many of these characters out of the city of Ferguson will themselves arrive in court, if not in the criminal part of the court building, the civil part. They will be sued. Numerous lawsuits will be sued. They're starting to be sued at the present time by the ACLU, but they will be no doubt sued for detaining the reporters, and various other citizens will sue that department. They will also sue St. Louis County. What that basically means is a lot of the material that is not out there will come out through the discovery process, and it will be presented to the people. Now, the St. Louis Dispatch there in St. Louis, and make sure I get the name of the paper there. I think it's Time Dispatch in St. Louis, has done a reasonably good job of presenting the story of this brutal racism to the people of the world. This is not just sent to the Post Dispatch there in St. Louis. They're just not presenting the take from the officers there in Ferguson or the county. They are presenting the whole story. In fact, the history of systematic discrimination within the police unit in the county, and one officer that was fired there for making derogatory comments and instructing his subordinates to profile African Americans and what he called tan-skinned. I'm assuming that's Latinos and Asians and whatever. The problem is these people have been running a brutal white supremacist regime forever, and now they've been confronted, and the governor's on the spot, so he sends the state police in. Effectively, he's removed this racist regime in Ferguson. The state patrol will be in charge of it. Now, the other problem is the county there in St. Louis. They should immediately give up their investigative tasks and turn it over to the state. They are incapable of conducting any investigation there. It's like letting the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan conduct the investigation. In fact, a member of the St. Louis County Police told an African-American citizen that was literally just repairing a house, "We assume that you are legitimate, but if you aren't, look out for the headless horseman." And there's no doubt there's some police departments there, like the St. Charles, Missouri Police Department, have been known to have members of the Klan openly in those departments. And they've been there for a very long time. I can recall in the 80s moving through that area, I actually saw some of their cops that had their Klan insignia on their gun belt. So this is nothing new. But this is not the 80s. What was tolerated in the 80s will just simply not be tolerated in 2014. Now, some of these characters eventually will find themselves at The Hague and for violation of civil rights. The St. Louis police chief has spoken out on this. He did not support the militarization, and thus he did not send people to deal with that situation down in Ferguson. They provided some light support. Now, this House leader is the House Majority Leader.
We need to have both safety so that people feel good.
And his name is John Dahlia, I suppose. He's a Republican from Town and Country, said today Nixon, this is the governor, should declare a state of emergency in Ferguson and impose a curfew in St. Louis County corridor. He is the speaker there, and that is what he would do. Dyer stopped short of calling for the National Guard. A lady on Facebook was talking about that. But no matter, that was what was in the, as they say, pinheads of these characters. He said, on the state of the emergency, the state, through agencies like the Missouri Highway Patrol could coordinate the response. Effectively, that is what you have. Missouri Highway Patrol is there, and they are coordinating the response. Just Nixon didn't call it a martial law. They do not have a curfew at this point in time, but they have a problem. And this problem could have magnified beyond what it is at this point in time, because with the 50 caliber, I think 40 caliber machine guns there, and there's various sub-automatic weapons, they could have easily killed 5, 10, or 20 people. Now that would have been equal to the type of massacre we had in the 60s in the apartheid state of South Africa in Sharpeville, where hundreds of people were killed, never got the final notice. But now people have the mobile phones, whether or not they're on Twitter or not, it will get out to the people, and they can record these things, whereas in 20s, 30s, and 40s Mississippi with the lynching, they could get away with this. But it's a lot more difficult today to get away with it. They had somebody in the St. Louis County Police called the Lone Wolf. He finally put his name out and filed a complaint against them. But they're going to be in a sea of racism out there, and whatever this guy Dyer has to say, honestly, it doesn't matter at this point in time. They will move on. But had they killed 5, 10, 15, 20 people, then it would have been a situation where President Obama would have had to federalize the Missouri National Guard and order them in and stand down the Ferguson and county police officers. That it has came to that situation, but it's not in the vacuum of this racist police chief Bellard, or whatever his name is, that they posted his wife's racist comments, his son's Confederate flag. All this information about these characters is being put out there. As far as this House leader talking about law-abiding citizens, well, there's no doubt about law-abiding citizens. There are law-abiding citizens out there. Curfews are not routine. They are in themselves only imposed when the dire needs are there. But the police response there is enough to ensure that no one is burning any store down. And when the stores were burned down, there was very little injury to quote-unquote private citizens of any race other than by the police department. So this just shows what has happened in Missouri and this town and country leadership that they've got there. This racist leadership has moved on. We'll go now to Governor Nixon and the broadcast of the reporters from the Washington Post and also the Huffington Post on their detainment as part of this, and you'll also hear from President Obama. Good day.
Most importantly, we are urging Iraqis to come together to turn the tide against ISIL, above all by seizing the enormous opportunity of forming a new, inclusive government under the leadership of Prime Minister-designate Abadi. I had a chance to speak to Prime Minister-designate Abadi a few days ago, and he spoke about the need for the kind of inclusive government, a government that speaks to all the people of Iraq that is needed right now. He still has a challenging task in putting a government together, but we are modestly hopeful that the Iraqi government situation is moving in the right direction. Now, second, I want to address something that's been in the news over the last couple of days, and that's the situation in Ferguson, Missouri. I know many Americans have been deeply disturbed by the images we've seen in the heartland of our country as police have clashed with people protesting. Today I'd like us all to take a step back and think about how we're going to be moving forward. This morning I received a thorough update on the situation from Attorney General Eric Holder, who's been following it and been in communication with his team. I've already tasked the Department of Justice and the FBI to independently investigate the death of Michael Brown, along with local officials on the ground. The Department of Justice is also consulting with local authorities about ways that they can maintain public safety without restricting the right of peaceful protest and while avoiding unnecessary escalation. I made clear to the Attorney General that we should do what is necessary to help determine exactly what happened and to see that justice is done. I also just spoke with Governor Jay Nixon of Missouri. I expressed my concern over the violent turn that events have taken on the ground and underscored that now is the time for all of us to reflect on what's happened and to find a way. He is going to be traveling to Ferguson. He is a good man and a fine governor, and I'm confident that working together, he's going to be able to communicate his desire to make sure that justice is done and his desire to make sure that public safety is maintained in an appropriate way. Of course, it's important to remember how this started. We lost a young man, Michael Brown, in heartbreaking and tragic circumstances. He was 18 years old. His family will never hold Michael in their arms again. And when something like this happens, the local authorities, including the police, have a responsibility to be open and transparent about how they are investigating that death and how they are protecting the people in their communities. There is never an excuse for violence against police or for those who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism or looting. There's also no excuse for police to use excessive force against peaceful protests or to throw protesters in jail for lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights. And here in the United States of America, police should not be bullying or arresting journalists who are just trying to do their jobs and report to the American people on what they see on the ground. Put simply, we all need to hold ourselves to a high standard, particularly those of us in positions of authority. I know that emotions are raw right now in Ferguson, and there are certainly passionate differences about what has happened. There are going to be different accounts of how this tragedy occurred. There are going to be differences in terms of what needs to happen going forward. That's part of our democracy. But let's remember that we're all part of one American family. We are united in common values, and that includes belief in equality under the law, a basic respect for public order, and the right to peaceful public protest, a reverence for the dignity of every single man, woman, and child among us, and the need for accountability when it comes to our government. So now's the time for healing. Now's the time for peace and calm on the streets of Ferguson. Now is the time for an open and transparent process to see that justice is done. And I've asked that the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney on the scene continue to work with local officials to move that process forward. They will be reporting to me in the coming days about what's being done to make sure that happens. Thanks very much, everybody.
I want to thank all of the local elected and appointed officials that are with us today, as well as the community leaders of this region. We deeply appreciate the stress and activities you've been going under, and also want to thank our great friends here at the University of Missouri St. Louis, Chancellor George, always deeply involved in the community and willing to assist us in whatever way, shape, or form, and I thank him for the excellent leadership he provides in this region. I want to thank everybody for joining us on a very, very busy day for the community. First, let me go through what we've done today. Then you'll hear from a couple of folks here, and then we'll be glad to take questions. This morning, I was briefed by state public safety officials on the events of yesterday evening and morning. I also spoke this morning with President Obama, who conveyed his concerns about the situation and appreciation for our efforts to resolve it. Here in St. Louis, I've met with faith and civic leaders, area legislators, and I took a moment to visit the scene this morning, where earlier this week a man not much younger than my own sons, lost his life. Finally, of course, I deeply appreciate the opportunity to speak with and hear from members of the neighborhood that is directly affected by the events of the last 6 days. They told me that they want a community that's healthy and happy and safe. They want their streets to be free from intimidation and fear. They told me they want peace, they want truth, and they want to be treated with respect. Today, my message to the people of Ferguson is that these voices have been heard. Over the past several days, we've all been deeply troubled by this crisis, as the pain of last weekend's tragedy has been compounded by days of grief and nights of conflict and fear. What's gone on here over the last few days is not what Missouri is about. It's not what Ferguson is about. This is a place where people work, go to school, raise their families, go to church, a diverse community, a Missouri community. But lately, it's looked a little bit more like a war zone, and that's unacceptable. To change that course, we're going to all need to join